Well, hello and welcome everyone to our webinar this evening. My name is Katie. I will be your host this evening, and our speaker and presenter will be Wendy Greger. The webinar and it is titled "Stop Focusing on What You Can't Learn." I'm sorry, I cannot see here. Sorry, let me start over. Stop focusing on what you can't eat and learn all about what you can eat. Healthy eating with diabetes. So we're so happy you've joined us this evening. And should you have any technical difficulties, there is a phone number to call at the bottom of your screen. Call Citrix Support at 1-800-263-6317. Our format includes a short presentation followed by an interactive discussion. If you have a question, use the questions section of the webinar toolbar at any time. You'll also have a chance to ask questions at the end of the presentation. Just a disclaimer, this presentation is intended to provide general nutrition advice, and it represents the professional opinion of the Cecilia Health Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist. This information is not a substitute for medical advice provided by your physicians. So our speaker this evening is Wendy Greger. Wendy is a registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist with a wealth of experience in diabetes and weight management. Wendy has been working with Cecilia Health for 4 years. She also works with her local hospital providing nutrition counseling, diabetes classes, and diabetes prevention classes. Wendy works individually with patients who are having trouble reaching their health goals. She believes that through compassion, knowledge, behavior modification, and motivation, patients are able to step by step walk toward better health and a better quality of life with diabetes. Now, let's listen to Wendy's approach to eating, and that is to stop focusing on all the food you aren't supposed to eat with diabetes and instead take a positive approach by giving your attention to what you can eat. So, Wendy, thank you so much for being with us this evening, and you may take it away.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for that nice introduction. I look forward to spending some time with all of you talking about my passion, and that is food and using food to help make you healthier. And I really do like to talk about what to eat and give people lots of ideas as opposed to always telling people what you shouldn't be eating that and you shouldn't be eating this. So we're going to stay positive today. I'd like to start off with a quote from Hippocrates that says, "Let food be your medicine." And Hippocrates was an ancient Greek physician, and he's considered the father of modern medicine. And he lived 2,400 years ago. Yet he understood clearly that food can heal, and he recommended that we use food as medicine. And you know what? That's not how we eat today, is it? Today we use food as entertainment. We use food as our passion. We use food as solace, meaning for our comfort. We use food as rewards, and we really indulge in food. And food has to taste oh so yummy all the time. And so I'm just going to encourage you to think about food as a way to heal your body and to think about food as another way of treating your conditions, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, inflammatory conditions, cancer. All of these can be treated with food. So on our agenda tonight, we're going to cover some basic nutrition myths and facts. And I want to do some provide some fun foundational information about nutrition, kind of to help us set the stage as to, what is food? What should we be eating? We'll talk about what to eat if you have diabetes and how to build better meals. I'm going to give you several examples of healthy breakfast meals, lunch meals, and dinner meals. So I want to get your gears rolling, gears engaged, brainstorming what should I be eating. So I hope you have a pen and a pencil and you can take some notes down to just get you started as you work on planning meals that are more in line with using food as medicine. Okay, so let's begin with our truth or myth. My first question for you is it recommended? Oh no, I have to say this as a statement. It is recommended that Americans should eat 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day. The second statement is only 25% of Americans meet the recommendation for vegetable consumption each day. And the third, the best diet for a person with diabetes is a low carb diet. So hopefully you've had time to think about your answers. Number one, it is recommended that Americans should eat 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day. That is true. And in fact, that's kind of a minimum. We need to get lots and lots of vegetables every day. And I'll be explaining why why those foods are so valuable as our seminar goes on. But you know what? The next statement is false. It says only 25% of Americans meet the recommendation for vegetables. Unfortunately, the truth is only 10% of Americans meet the recommendation. 10% meet this. Oh, that is shocking to me and so disheartening. So one of the most important takeaways from today's presentation is we've got to find more ways to build more vegetables into our diet. And the best diet for a person with diabetes is a low carb diet. That's a myth. So you can follow any number of meal plans that you're interested in. You could follow a low carb diet, and there are ways to make that healthy, but you could also follow a higher carb diet like you would find in a vegetarian plan. That's a higher carb diet where about 60% of the calories come from carbs. Or you could follow a Mediterranean diet. That's a very balanced meal plan. So there's no one right diet for people with diabetes. There's just some basic foundational properties that we want for you, whether you pick a low carb or a high carb diet or a mixed diet. The foundational message is that all of these healthy diets need to have more vegetables. They all need to have less processed and refined carbohydrates, and they need to have fewer total calories than what the average American eats. Okay, let's cover our nutrition fundamentals. There are some basic things I want to make sure you understand. Okay, there's 3 sources of calories in food. 3 sources of calories that are nutrients. One is carbohydrates, one is proteins, and one are fats. So carbohydrates, I want you to think of these as a form of fuel, just like gasoline in your car. Carbohydrates are a form of fuel, and they carry water-soluble vitamins. They also are a source of fiber and antioxidants when you choose the right carbohydrates. Proteins, I want you to think of these as the building blocks of every cell and every structure in the human body. So proteins are the building blocks. They're like the bricks in a house. And fats are another form of fuel. They carry fat-soluble vitamins, and they're also a source of omega-3 fatty acids, those very healthy fish oils. So those are the 3 sources of calories in food that are nutrients. And then there are 3 more nutrients. First, let me give you the best examples of these nutrients. So if we're talking about carbohydrates, the best choices are going to be things like your vegetables and whole vegetables, whole fruits, beans and legumes like black beans, navy beans, pinto beans, so beans, and whole grains like oats or brown rice or 100% whole grain breads and whole grain products like um, whole wheat flour, whole pasta, and crackers, things that are made with 100% whole grain. So those are the best carbohydrates. I'm sure you're thinking of the carbohydrates that are not our best choice. Those are the refined ones, the refined processed carbohydrates. So sugars, white flour, and all of the products that are made from those refined carbohydrates. Okay, proteins, the best choices are fish, lean poultry, lean beef, and pork, and eggs. What are the not so healthy protein choices? Those would be processed meats, sausage, bacon, pepperoni, all of the processed meats are going to be higher in salt and fat, unhealthy saturated fats. And then your best choices in fats, you can see nuts and seeds and also butters of those. So nut butters, peanut butter, almond butter, avocados, canola oil, olive oil. So these are the best choices of these foundational nutrients. And there's three other nutrients I want to mention to you. These don't have any calories, but they provide all of the properties in our foods that help keep us healthy and keep our bodies running. So the first three nutrients are sources of energy and building blocks. The next three nutrients help us process the energy, vitamins and minerals. And of course, water is a nutrient. It's probably the one people don't think of first as a nutrient, but we need a lot of water. All right. So of our 6 nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water, the primary nutrient that impacts your blood sugar are carbohydrates. And so we are going to be talking a lot about your source of carbohydrates and how much carbohydrates are in your meals. So I'd like you to get a pen and paper or something to write on. And for the men listening, please jot down that for a meal, general recommendation would be 45 to 60 grams of carb in a meal and 15 to 30 grams of carb if you were to have a snack. And for women, 30 to 45 grams of carb per meal and 0 to 15 grams of carb in a snack. I wanted just to mention this as just a basic guideline, certainly not telling you that you should eat this many grams of carb in your meals, but some people are going to want to know what is a basic carbohydrate allowance that I can have. Now, if you are trying to eat lower carbs, you're going to kind of keep it to the lower end of that. For men, 45 for a meal, maybe even 30 for a meal if you're really shooting for low carb. For women, 15 to 30 grams would be a really low carb meal, up to 45 grams. So it gives you a point of reference. And of course, if you guys want to question that, please write your questions in the box. We can discuss it. I welcome your feedback. I welcome your questions as we go along. And as I show you sample meals, I'm going to actually as I show you sample meals, I'm actually going to refer to how many carbs are in the sample meals. Okay, as we talk about the carb content of foods, well, how can you find out how many carbs are in your foods? I know if you're listening, you're probably already versed in this. It's not something new for you, but let me just recommend a couple good sources. You can, of course, read on the food labels. Food packages have nutrition labels that give you the carb content. You can do a really simple search online. Just open a Google search and type in how many carbs are in an apple. You can write how many carbs are in a McDonald's quarter pounder. You can type how many carbohydrates are in a carrot. These things are available to you. You can search them very simply. You could probably even just ask it to Siri. Hey Siri, how many carbohydrates are in an apple? And they'll search it for you. And the third great source of information are food apps. Like MyFitnessPal. You can download an app on your smartphone and just, become familiar with the app and then enter in the foods and it'll give you the nutrition information. So a great way to find carb content. Let me touch on reading labels. When you read a label, I encourage everyone to make sure you read the serving size first, because the carbohydrate information obviously is in reference to the serving size. But you might have a package in your hand that looks like one serving to you, but in fact, the nutrition facts information is for half of the package or half of the bottle of whatever beverage it is. So it's really important to look at the serving size first and then let your eye travel down to the total carbohydrates, and it'll give it to you in grams, just like we're talking about. And you also can note that total carbohydrates is in boldface and everything underneath it is included in the total. So in this sample, the 37 grams of carbohydrates, that includes the 12 grams of sugar. So 12 grams of sugar is not in addition to, it's included in the total. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And now let's move on to the primary purpose of our conversation tonight, which is coming up with sample meal ideas, things that you can think about that you might want to plan for your own meals. And again, if you question my suggestion, write it in the box and we'll address that for you. So let's start off with breakfast. Um, Break for a better breakfast. It is an important meal every day. I encourage all of my patients, whether, you know what, not just my patients, but my friends and my family members, to always start the day with breakfast. That old adage where you should eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and dinner like a pauper is smart. You want to get your food in early so that you have time to um, watch the blood sugar response to that meal and be able to address it, as opposed to eating a really big meal when that blood sugar response to the meal might hit when you're asleep and you really don't have an opportunity to address it, to take action, whether that would be to exercise a little more or to take a correction dose of insulin if you are using fast acting insulin. So breakfast. So first off, a very common popular breakfast is a bowl of cereal. But I want to mention that a large bowl of cereal with whole milk and a banana and a glass of juice, that's got 90 grams of carbohydrate. And that's if you followed the serving size for the cereal. And not many people follow the serving size. They often will have 2 servings. So that 90 grams of carb for your bowl of cereal could actually turn into 150 grams of carb if you're not measuring your portions very carefully. But let me also say that a whole banana ranges from, a 15-gram carbohydrate banana for a real small banana to maybe even a 45-gram banana, 45 grams of carb if it's a large banana. So watch the portion sizes of that. So as an alternative, may I suggest a small bowl of high fiber cereal like bran flakes, or shredded wheat, or I love the bran flakes without the added fruit, because those dried fruit cereals with the raisin bran, if you compare the label, that raisin bran can be a lot higher in carbs. So I choose high fiber cereals, Wheaties, Product 19, shredded wheat, bran flakes, and use a low fat milk, because it's going to save calories and be lower in saturated fat, or a Greek yogurt on your cereal. Sometimes I just start off with Greek yogurt and then pour in the bran flakes, a handful of berries. That only has 45 grams of carbs, so less. It's half of what the first breakfast was. And if you're a bigger eater and you need more calories, you can add a hard-boiled egg to that, or you could add some nuts and seeds to give it a few extra calories. So now let's look at a few other breakfast ideas. How about old-fashioned oats? Actually, old-fashioned oats is one of the best breakfast foods that you can eat. The soluble fiber in oats really helps reduce serum cholesterol by, I wonder if anyone knows this, but oats can absorb cholesterol in the small intestine. Um, uh, I take that back. Well, oats do form a soluble gel. The fiber that are in oats, the soluble fibers, form like a gel, and that can soak up some of the cholesterol that is in bile acids that's used in digestion, and that can help excrete cholesterol. So that's why soluble fibers that you find in oats are a good way to help lower serum cholesterol. So with this great breakfast, we added some chopped walnuts because I think that's delicious in oats, maybe even ground flaxseed. All of your nuts and seeds are a great source of fiber. Many of them, again, have some of those soluble fibers, and a half of a banana, and that keeps the carbs down to about 45 grams. And those of you that like to eat even a lower carb breakfast, here's a breakfast that could be as low as just 20 grams of carbohydrates with scrambled eggs. But instead of using the traditional egg breakfast, may I say, with bacon or sausage and potatoes, let's use sauteed vegetables. Remember, we want to add vegetables into our diet to build up our portion of vegetables. So let's add sauteed onions, peppers, maybe sliced tomatoes. Um, I like to put spinach in scrambled eggs too. Any vegetables that you like are great. Green peppers. And then have your like scrambled eggs with vegetables with a slice of 100% whole wheat toast. And that could be as low as 20 grams of carb. So two more great breakfast ideas. All right, let's turn our attention to lunch ideas. And I put on my first slide here fast food lunch ideas. Why? Why would I put fast food in here? And the primary reason is because so many people eat fast food for lunch. It's a real common practice. So instead of like the bacon cheeseburger, the large order of fries, the large regular soda, that you know what? A lot of people order this and look at the carbs, 195 grams of carbs. That's more than you need in a whole day. That is a heavy hit of carbs, and that is going to send your blood sugars up so high. So as an alternative, um, I love the salads that they serve now at fast food restaurants. Southwest salad with grilled chicken is at McDonald's. They offer a Southwest salad dressing, and that's only going to be about 40 grams of carbohydrate. So that's a nice, modest um, uh, lunch choice from a fast food restaurant. Some of the other fast food restaurants also have salads like Cobb salads, or I've seen apple walnut salads at some of the fast food restaurants. I think that's at Wendy's. But salad options are back on the menu for a lot of the fast food restaurants. They've been gone for a couple years and I can't even tell you why. It has something to do with COVID, but you're seeing them on menus again. You can also buy packaged salads at the grocery store. So you don't have to make it. You can buy it already prepared for you, and the label would tell you how many grams of carb are in it. And then if you were at a fast food restaurant and you wanted to eat fast food, well, as an alternative, try just their regular burger. Just a regular hamburger instead of a bacon cheeseburger, the jumbo quarter pounder, um, you know, product, just go for the regular hamburger. You could order a small fry. I know McDonald's offers sliced apples so that you'd be getting some fresh whole produce in your meal, and that's about 65 grams of carb. Or another way to do it would be to cut out the fry and have the burger, the sliced apples, unsweetened tea, and a side salad. So another option for you. But so you can, I personally, I will tell you, I can eat anywhere, any restaurant, any fast food restaurant, and I can make healthy choices, and I can stick with my meal plan. So you can too. We just have to keep our eyes open for options. Okay, more lunch ideas. Um, I love the idea of making your lunch foundation a big bed of greens. So you can take a big bed of greens. You can use, um, I love romaine lettuce. You can buy mixed greens at the grocery store, already cleaned, already ready to go. And then you can put your what you might have used on a sandwich, you can put it on a bed of greens. You could put chopped up chicken, leftover chicken. I'm making this salad in our example here, a vegetarian plan where we're using beans, half of a cup of black beans or pinto beans or garbanzo beans as a protein choice, which is also a carbohydrate choice, combining that with some chopped vegetables. Like I would probably add to my greens chopped tomatoes, chopped green pepper, red pepper, um, chopped celery. So those are some of the vegetables that I would chop and add. You could use a tablespoon of sliced almonds, a cup of fresh strawberries, and so the carbs are coming from the strawberries. A cup of strawberries is about 15 to 20 grams of carb, and a half of a cup of beans is about 15. So 30, 40, about 40 grams of carb in your salad. Another great, relatively low carb salad. If you wanted to reduce the carbs more, replace the beans with chicken, and you'd be down to practically 15 to 20 carbs in that lunch. And another idea for lunches, I wanted to suggest a homemade taco. You can use 2 corn tortillas, which are about 15 grams of carb each. Um, in fact, there's a lot of low carb tortillas available at the grocery store now. You can find some high fiber, low carb flour tortillas where the whole tortilla might own, a bigger, like 6 or 8 inch tortilla might only have 10 grams of carb. So pick your tortillas, use leftover meats. You can use leftover grilled chicken, leftover grilled steak. You can use leftover cooked salmon. I have salmon in the refrigerator that's left over from last night. I could crumble that up and put it into a taco. You can use some black beans or some pinto beans, some avocado, and some pico de gallo or salsa. And your carbs here are going to come from the beans, which half of a cup of beans is about 15 grams of carb, and your tortilla. So you can read the label. But I'm estimating 2 corn tortillas and the beans are about 40 grams of carb. Really keeping that carb content fairly low. And now let's turn our attention to a delicious dinner instead of, and boy, I picked a really high carb dinner here. We've got chicken fried steak, we've got mashed potatoes, corn, a small dinner roll, and sweet tea. So doesn't that sound like a real Southern meal for you? And you've got 115 grams of carb or more because you've got a sweetened beverage. A small roll would be 15 grams of carb, maybe even more if it's not so small. Half of a cup of corn is 15 grams of carb. Cup of mashed potatoes is 30. There's probably some flour in the coating on the steak. So a high carb meal. Instead of that, you can still enjoy your steak dinner, but let's have grilled steak, not chicken fried steak. So we'll have some grilled sirloin steak, a nice lean cut. You can have a small baked potato, and I threw in a sweet potato because that's going to give a whole lot of antioxidants, a lot of vitamin A from the sweet potato. A half of a cup of sweet potatoes, 15 grams of carb, and a whole cup is 30. Just like the mashed potatoes, but if it's a whole potato, it probably isn't mashed with a lot of butter and cream, so the calories will probably be lower. And we're going to have our steak with some vegetables like steamed broccoli. Half of a cup of broccoli has 1/3 of the amount of carbs as the corn. So that's only about 5 grams of carb versus 15 for corn. And a green salad, a small side salad, is going to be real low carb. And then we'll have it with unsweetened tea. So we took a high calorie, high carb meal and turned it into a really nice, lean, healthy 40-gram carb meal. We've got 15 grams in the sweet potato, another 5 here, 15, that's 20. And I think maybe I was thinking that there'd be more than 15 in the potato, like it's more like a cup. So that's how I came up with 40. It could even be lower if you kept your portion size small. And a few other dinner ideas for you. Let's think, how do you like fish? We know that the national guideline is that you should get 2 servings of fish a week. So a grilled salmon night would be ever so smart. A cup of roasted winter vegetables. You could cut up carrots and beets, both pretty low carb vegetables. Carrots, beets, you could cut up some potatoes and roast those winter vegetables in an oven. I like to cut up these vegetables into 1-inch cubes. So 1-inch potatoes, 1-inch carrots, 1-inch beets. You could also use, what's that other tuber? Trying to think of what that other tuber is that I've thrown into those roasted winter vegetables. All of a sudden it's escaping my memory. Um, put them in a bag, drizzle just a little bit of olive oil over them, maybe a sprinkle of kosher salt, roast them in an oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. Maybe check them and see if they need any longer, but they're delicious and they're really healthy for you with those roasted vegetables. So, and a cup of steamed spinach or other greens and some sparkling water or hot tea, and another meal with just 40 grams of carb. Your roasted vegetables are where most of the carbs are coming from, but a cup of steamed spinach might contribute about 10 grams of carb. So that's where you're getting 30 grams in a cup of the vegetables that are roasted. Okay, one other option for dinner would be a stir fry, and you can just cut up you can use chicken, raw chicken breast, or you could use pork, like pork loin, or you could use sirloin steak and stir fry your protein in some oil, real short, short cooking time, high temperature in a fry pan, and toss that aside and throw in all kinds of vegetables, anything in your refrigerator. I like to cut up celery, onions, mushrooms, peppers, and cabbage is a staple in stir fries. So you could use savory cabbage chopped up. So just chop up a bunch of vegetables, stir fry them in your frying pan with a little bit of oil. And then if you serve that with 2/3 of a cup of steamed brown rice, the 2/3 of a cup is 30 grams of carbohydrate, and another cup of vegetables, you're up to about 45 grams of carb. So our dinner ideas are chicken or salmon or grilled steak and 40 to 45 grams of carb across the board. So as you think about planning meals, I hope we've given you some fresh ideas for you to consider. And I want to also recommend the plate method for meal planning. This is a really handy tool, and want you to try to think about ways of filling half of your plate with vegetables. So half of your plate from the stir fry could be vegetables. Our other meals um, had the roasted winter vegetables, and it had broccoli. And so we're working on reducing the starch in our meal to just a fourth of our plate. That could be a half of a cup to a cup of starchy vegetables or grains, whole grains, that keeps your carbs under 45 for the meal. And then lean meats have no carbs, so those are safe, and your non-starchy vegetables are also real low carb. So that's the plate method for meal planning, and most of your coaches are probably talking with you about this is a great tool to increase vegetables in your meal planning. But the bottom line is that there's no one food or no foods that are completely off limits when you are planning healthy meals for people with diabetes, but it's important to keep in mind portion size, and making those choices healthy by including whole plant foods, minimally processed carbohydrates, and lean protein sources. Carbohydrates are not bad, um, and I want you to include the whole carbohydrates that provide fiber, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals that are going to really help fight inflammation in your body and keep us healthy. So, carbohydrates are not bad, but there are your best choices. There are better choices for you to steer towards, and kind of limiting or reducing the amount of refined carbohydrates. And then, last but not least, using the plate method is a great tool for balancing your food choices. All right. Um, I thank you for joining me tonight for this discussion about all of the foods we want you to include in your daily diet. And I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can type them into the toolbar. I'm not sure about raising your hand because we don't have the voice enabled for our guests, but please go ahead and type your questions, and I'll go through them. I do see we have two questions so far. My first question is, what is my opinion about artificial sweeteners? And that's a question that I get quite often from our patients with diabetes. My opinion about artificial sweeteners comes from the American Diabetes Association, and they say that artificial sweeteners can play a part in a healthy diet for people with diabetes, particularly when they are used in place of sweetened beverages, sugar sweetened beverages. So um, that's a yes. That's a yes to products that are sweetened with artificial sweeteners as opposed to sugar sweetened. So I'd much rather that you chose, if you're going to have a soda, much rather you chose a diet soda over a sweetened, regularly sweetened soda. I'd much rather you put Splenda or stevia in a cup of coffee than sugar or honey. And it's probably going to save you a lot of carbs if you sweeten your cereals and your beverages with artificial sweeteners, and using them in moderation. That is the recommendation of the American Diabetes Association. Of course, you don't have to use them at all. If you're opposed, then you're welcome to just choose unsweetened choices, or to use a small amount of regular sugar. Let me also suggest stevia as a natural sweetener that you might feel more comfortable with. So it's your choice. And the last question that I have is, what do I use for apps for analyzing food or for planning meals and figuring out how many carbs are in my meals. So the two apps that I'm most versed with are MyFitnessPal, and I love MyFitnessPal. I use it every day. I find that the more you use the app, the more familiar you are with how to navigate through its screens. I think it's a great tool. I love the scanning your barcode portion of the MyFitnessPal. So I love that one. And I have patients that have talked to me and coworkers that have talked to me about Lose It. As another great app that you can download on your smartphone. It's also free. There's a free version of MyFitnessPal and Lose It. You do not have to upgrade to the version that you have to pay for, and that it also has the code, the way that you can scan barcodes. So those are two great apps. There are so many available. I encourage you to kind of Google search apps for counting carbs and see what some of the other comments are. All right, well, I don't see any other questions, so I thank you all for joining me this evening. And I want to mention some additional live events that are coming up. You can also talk to your coach who would know about these and be able to share the information with you. In April, it the live event is Say No to Diabetes Complications and Say Yes to Reducing Your Risk, Keeping Kidneys, Nerves, and Eyes Healthy. And in May, we have a live event on safe and smart exercise for people with diabetes. I think I've heard both of these. I think they'd be excellent, and I encourage you to check them out. If you need more support and you want to attend more events, please talk to your coach. Simply reply to one of her emails that she might send you about the live events, or just ask the coach for more information. You want to text? Would you like text appointment reminders? Ask your coach. We have those. They're available for all of our Cecilia Health participants. And on Facebook, you can get more great diabetes information and tips if you join us on Facebook at just search Cecilia Health Personalized Diabetes Coaching. And we would love to see you there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance and we appreciate your questions. And I hope you all have a super pleasant evening tonight. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.